Hello there everyone, welcome back to Press for Truth TV. Today is Wednesday, September the 12th, 2012, and there's some major news in the headlines today as late last night there was an attack in Libya. The U.S. ambassador to Libya has just been murdered, and what I'm hearing today for the most part, largely from the mainstream media, is that this attack is a reactionary retaliation in response to a film that was released that has upset the Muslim community because it depicts the Prophet Muhammad in a satirical way. But I think the point that the mainstream media is leaving out and missing out on in this huge story today is the fact that this is more proof that nothing good is coming out of the Obama administration's military intervention in Libya, which was all done under the guise of humanitarianism. And now we're starting to see just what kind of things are coming out of such actions. Here's an article today which is making its rounds all over the net from RT. U.S. ambassador consul among 4 killed in militia attacks on Benghazi consulate. The U.S. ambassador to Libya and 3 other Americans were killed when local militia assaulted Washington's consulate in Benghazi. President Barack Obama has condemned the attack. Reports from various sources paint an unclear picture of the circumstances surrounding Ambassador John Christopher Stevens' death. A group of extremist militia members stormed Benghazi's U.S. consulate on Tuesday night. Stevens may not have been killed in the Tuesday night assault, however, but rather when a second mob attacked his motorcade as it was leaving Benghazi Wednesday morning, says The Guardian. Libyan officials alleged that Islamist militants fired rockets at Stevens' car, killing him and 3 other embassy staffers. Witnesses cited by local media claimed that members of the hardline Islamist group Ansar al-Sharia were among the ranks of the attackers. President Obama and NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen has roundly condemned the attack and mourns Stevens' death. Chris was a courageous and exemplary representative of the United States throughout the Libyan revolution. He selflessly served our country and the Libyan people at our mission in Benghazi, says President Obama in a statement. We apologize to the United States, the people, and to the whole world for what happened, interim Libyan President Mohamed Magharif said in a news conference. We confirm that no one will escape from punishment and questioning. But again, for the most part, this is being touted as a reactionary response to the release of this film. But I would have to concur today with the analysis of Paul Joseph Watson, who articulated it very well in his article today that I'd also like to refer you to, which states it's called "Was U.S. Ambassador Lynched?" Despite initial reports suggesting he died in a rocket attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, photos appear to indicate that U.S. Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens was killed by a lynch mob, illustrating the disastrous consequences of the Obama administration's military intervention in Libya, arming some of the very men who carried out today's attacks. The U.S. ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens, has been killed in a rocket attack in the eastern city of Benghazi, along with 3 other embassy staff, the White House confirmed on Wednesday. However, images released in the hours after the attack show Stevens' body being paraded around by a mob. The body appears to show signs of torture. Subsequent reports speculate that Stevens' car was attacked as he and the 3 other personnel attempted to escape from the consulate. The other embassy staff were shot, while Stevens died of suffocation, suggesting he was lynched and physically attacked by the mob. The incident is being portrayed by the establishment media as a reaction to a film produced in the United States that purportedly ridicules Islam's Prophet Muhammad. However, the wider issue of how the 2011 bombardment of Libya paved the way for gangs of militant Islamic extremists, once backed by NATO powers with heavy weapons, to fill the power vacuum left by Colonel Gaddafi has largely been ignored. Indeed, it's a horrific irony that Hillary Clinton's infamous gloating about Gaddafi's execution, "We came, we saw, he died," has now come full circle, with Stevens paying for such despicable arrogance with his life. After NATO-backed insurgents with links to Al-Qaeda helped topple Colonel Gaddafi in Libya, they proudly flew the distinctive black Al-Qaeda flag over courthouses in Benghazi and other centers of power. That same flag flew over the consulate today after the US flag was torn down and burned. In the aftermath of last year's no-fly zone, which turned into an incessant bombardment almost overnight, Libya, once one of the richest countries in Africa, is now run by brutal armed gangs who have rounded up black people in huge numbers, subjecting them to torture, incarceration in concentration camps, and execution. A February 2012 report by Amnesty International found that Libya's militias are largely out of control, and that thousands of detainees are being held in various prisons across the country. They're being tortured to death. The country's NATO-installed rulers have proven themselves unwilling to prevent widespread abuse. Libya's oil resources have been carved up between NATO-allied corporations, while the country's financial enslavement to global bankers is ensured with a fresh IMF loan and at the end of their state-owned central banking system. Despite the fact that Libya is in the state of a hellish sectarian warfare and societal collapse, with armed thugs hostile to the West now in control of major power centers, the White House is intent on repeating the same disaster in Syria, funneling arms to rebels, the majority of whom aren't even Syrian, who are being led by Al-Qaeda terrorists. And I've covered that topic extensively as well, pointing out the fact that it is the Israeli and American intelligence networks like the CIA who have been the ones funding and arming these Al-Qaeda-led rebels, who are always the ones responsible for these violent attacks. And we're starting to see a pattern emerge here. We've seen it in Iraq, we've seen it in Libya, and we're potentially going to see it in Syria, Sudan, Somalia, Iran. These are all on the chopping block. And let's not forget that the majority of these countries do not have a Rothschild-run centralized bank, and that is precisely the reason for the takeover of the Middle East in the past decade, is to gain tighter control over the world by the puppet string pullers. Indeed, some of the very same militants responsible for Libya's debacle were airlifted into Syria with the aid of NATO powers as part of the effort to topple Bashar al-Assad. The assault on Libya was carried out with absolutely zero constitutional authorization. And just last year, President Obama arrogantly expressed his hostility to the rule of law when he dismissed the need to get congressional authorization to commit the United States to a military intervention in Libya, churlishly dismissing criticism and remarking, "I don't even have to get to the constitutional question." And that is another issue that we covered extensively in our video report called Press for Truth Presents the 21st New World Order of the 21st Century. I'll put a link to that in the description so you can check it out, where we show how in hearings, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta basically announced that the U.S. Congress no longer, that the military no longer seeks approval from Congress in regards to invading another country and in a military-led intervention, but that it can now seek international, it can seek its permissions from an international governing body, even perhaps an ad hoc governing body that may someday in the near future be set up. But they basically said it's no longer up to Congress to decide when the U.S. can intervene militarily, but that can now be decided upon by UN or NATO. It goes on to say here, Obama tried to legitimize his failure to obtain congressional approval for military involvement by sending a letter to Speaker of the House John Bonner, in which he said the military assault was authorized by the United Nations UN Security Council. Today's attack on the U.S. consulate serves as another reminder that the military-industrial complex's new paradigm of humanitarian intervention, a scam they hope to repeat in Syria, has nothing to do with humanitarianism, in that it only results in more bloodshed and more instability. And again, that is the point that I'm trying to reiterate today, is that these military-led interventions by the U.S. under the guise of humanitarianism is clearly not resulting in what we are being told was the whole point of going in there. And so we're going to keep an eye on this one over the next few days. As I said, reports coming out today are that this is in reaction to this film. And looking into this filmmaker a little bit, it's that's very questionable right there. This man allegedly raised $5 million, he says, from over 100 Jewish donors who he is not releasing their identities, but it just feels like propaganda to me. I don't know who these donors were who funded this project, but again, it seems like just more propaganda. And I think the bigger story here is that this is proof that these countries are not better off when the U.S. intervenes militarily. And so this is something to keep in mind, because as we know, they've been drumming up the war drums, beating them louder and louder surrounding Syria, and also a potential military intervention in Iran. So it's absolutely key to pay attention to these to these stories as they develop, because we have to have a solid understanding of the past, how things are operating today, in order to get a clear picture of what they have in mind for some of these other nations that have yet to have their own Rothschild-run central banks. And so anyways, guys, just wanted to bring that to your attention today. As I said, this is a developing story. We're going to be hearing a lot more of this, I'm sure, today and tomorrow. So we'll continue to follow this one. But that's all for today, guys. I want to thank you once again for tuning in, and I'll see everyone right back here tomorrow at pressfortruth.tv.